For those who are not aware, I think everybody is, most people are, the role that Ohr Somayach has played across the globe in Klal Yisrael, every community that you go to, everywhere you go, you will find Ohr Somayach graduates. And the Ohr Somayach graduates are not only in a secondary role. You will find Ohr Somayach graduates who are the Rabbanim, they're the educators, they're the teachers, and in many cases they're the leaders of the community. I don't think that we ever ask anybody to do what they can't do, but anyone who is able to give away, has extra spare meiser geld or tzedakah money that's earmarked for tzedakah, I can think of no better area where that money can be put to use as a benefit to the yeshiva and as a benefit to all of Klal Yisrael. Guys, a chance to come. I learned when I was in youth group, so I was in Bnei Akiva youth group, so they used to have what they called a shaliach. A shaliach was always an Israeli guy who would come to America for a couple of years, and he would be he would supervise us in youth group. And I was once I was about 16 years old, and we were going to a meeting. I was on the what's it called, the board of our youth group, and then 16 years old. So we had a meeting at a girl's house at about 8 o'clock at night. It was called for 8 o'clock at night. So the shaliach, his name was Baum, who was a Yeki. So he picked me up, and we got to the house at about 2 minutes to 8. So I started reaching for the door to get out of the car, and he grabs my hand. He said, we said 8 o'clock. And he said, you shouldn't be late, but you also should be early. And then maybe they're not ready for you. 8 o'clock is 8 o'clock. And I said, so shouldn't be late. Okay, we're on Per Gimel, Pasuk Gimel, 3:3. Got a few points to cover here. In Bamidbar 3:3. So here it lists the names of Aaron. And if you notice, it says, pick it up, 736, page 736. We read this yesterday, but there are a couple points here we didn't mention. Ve'ela toldos Aaron and Moshe, 736, about 9 lines from the top. Ve'ela toldos Moshe and Aaron, these are the children of Moshe, Aaron. Ve'ela toldos Aaron and Moshe. B'yom diber Hashem al Moshe b'har Sinai. And it's interesting because it doesn't mention Moshe's children here. It only mentions Aaron's children. It says these are the children of Moshe and Aaron and Moshe, and then it only goes, it says, Ve'ela shmos b'nei Aaron habechor nadav avihu elazar v'isamar. Now there are two questions here. Question number one is, why does it say the children of Moshe and Aaron if it only says Aaron's children? So Rashi points out, because somebody who teaches somebody else Torah, it's as if he has given birth to him. A Rabbi who teaches Talmidim, so it's as if they are his children, number one. Number two, you'll notice it seems to be a lot of emphasis here on the names. It says in Posuk Beis, Ve'ela shmos b'nei Aaron habechor nadav avihu, and then again, Eila shmos b'nei Aaron hakodim ha'mishuchev shem le'edav chayin. That repeats it. First of all, it names them again, and second of all, it repeats it. Now why? Why does it repeat it? So one of the Mefarshim says that one of the mistakes there, Chumashim, if you help yourself to a Chumashim, there are plenty of Chumashim over here.
What's the question? What does it repeat?
Why is it emphasizing their names, and why does it repeat it? Whenever you repeat something, repetition implies some sort of emphasis. It says Eila shmos b'nei Aaron, Eila shmos b'nei Aaron. It says it twice, and it's emphasizing the names. So one of the Mefarshim says like this: one of the misconceptions that people have is that we think, people looking at religious Jews from the outside, they think that we think that we're perfect, that we're flawless, which is not true, because we have flaws. They think that we think that we're just perfect. And quite the contrary, the more devoted a person becomes, ironically, the more we realize that we have flaws. The less devoted a person says, well, I'm a good person. And the more devoted a person becomes, says, well, you know what, my davening could be a little bit better, and my maybe I could learn more. We start to become to the contrary. Our goals start to change. If that's true for us, then what about Torah leaders? And there's a perception that we think, or they think that we think, that Torah leaders are infallible, which is not true. Not only that, I'll prove it to you. Every name you could come up with in the Torah, just about every name in the Torah that you come up with, the Torah points out a flaw. How do you like that? Adam sinned, Chava sinned, Avram Avinu, Noach got drunk. Avram Avinu challenged. He said, Hashem. He asked. His faith was not at the level it was supposed to be. Yitzchak favored Esav, the wicked son. He was deceived by Esav. Yaakov Avinu married two sisters. He even got angry at Rachel at one point. Moshe Rabbeinu hit the rock. Aaron was involved with the golden calf. Miriam spoke Lashon Hara. How do you like that? Every single name you point at, just about, and it seems there's a flaw. What's going on here? And the answer is, one of the Mefarshim says, I think it's either Rav Hirsch or the Osnaim Torah, he says, by the Catholics, why does the Pope get a new name? Why does the Pope get it? He's not. What's this guy's name now?
Witness protection program.
Yeah, something like that. Not quite. Why does I forgot what his name is. Anyway, he's a White Sox fan. But now, what is he now? Leo or something?
Yes.
He's Leo. Why he wasn't born Leo? Why did he become Leo? The answer is they believe in something called papal infallibility. The Pope can't make any mistakes. And when you become a new name, you become a new essence. You become a new being. The Pope is infallible. Oh, said the Torah. These are the Kohanim. Aaron HaKohen, his sons. These are the holy leaders of Klal Yisrael, but they're not infallible. These are their names. The name they were born with is the name they're named in the Torah. There's no such thing as infallibility. Quite the contrary. We have a whole Masechta. There's a whole Masechta in Shas called Horius, where the Sanhedrin have erred in a ruling. And we go and shamelessly say, what do the Sanhedrin do when they make a mistake? Because people can make it. The only people in the world who don't make mistakes are people who don't do anything. The safest thing, the only way to not make a mistake is not to do anything, which is often the biggest mistake of all. But it's the only, anybody who achieves anything, there are going to be mistakes. You're a posek, sometimes a posek made a mistake, it happens. You have to be big enough to then say, oh, by the way, I made a mistake over here. You made a mistake, okay, it happens. So the Torah is emphasizing these are their names. We never claimed infallibility for ourselves or for our leaders. And therefore the Torah wants to emphasize that. Okay, now go to Pasuk Daled. Vayamas. No, am I in the right place? Gimel. No, Pasuk Yud Beis. I'm sorry, Pasuk Yud Beis. Whoa. Pasuk Yud Beis. On page 738. Vayidaber Hashem al Moshe Lemor. V'ani hine lakachti es haLevi mitoch b'nei Yisrael. I have taken the Leviim. Tachas kol bechor. Everybody see that? It's 6 lines from the top. 5 lines from the top on 738. On 738, 5 lines at the top. V'ani hine lakachti es haLevi mitoch b'nei Yisrael. I've taken the Leviim. Tachas kol bechor peter rechem ibnei Yisrael, in place of the firstborns. V'hayu li haLeviim. And the Leviim shall be to serve me. Now take a look at Rashi. It's the right column of Rashi, 5 lines from the top. If you see it, please show the person next to you. V'ani lakachti, says Rashi. Everybody see that? V'ani mehechan zachisi lahem. Where did I, God, merit to be able to take the Leviim, so to speak? Mitoch b'nei Yisrael. Sheyu Yisrael sochrin osan l'sherus sheli, that the Jewish people should hire them for my service. Al yedei bechora zechisi bahem v'lakachtim tuburasa. I took them in place of the firstborns. Lefi shehaisa avoda babechoros, because the service was originally meant to be done by the firstborns. Ukshechatu be'egel nifsalu. when they sinned at the golden calf, they became disqualified. This is very interesting because we're on page 738. 738. This is very interesting because now the Torah is telling us why the Levium were chosen. But if you look earlier on the previous page, it says, it says over there that the Levium are chosen. So why is it only over here that the reason is given? Why were the Levium chosen? They're chosen in place of the Bechors. They're chosen in place of the Bechors. Fine. So why didn't you tell me that right away? Why are you waiting till here? And the answer is that the Torah is teaching you, originally Hashem says, take the Levium. And you're looking at yourself, why? Why not the Bechors? Why? And now the Torah tells you, by the way, I had a reason for it. There was a reason for what I did. To learn a little faith, HaKadosh Baruch Hu does it, there's a reason why he's doing it. Do we have to know the reason? Not necessarily. And not necessarily right then. And there's by the way, for parents, this is often an issue. If your kid says to you, why? You tell your kid to do something, the kid says, why you do it, or probably more often, you tell your kid he can't do something. Why? Now, what is the standard answer of fathers in many cases? Because I said so. They all went to the same father's school, right? Because I said so. So I don't think I ever said that to my kids. I don't think I ever used that as a reason. I never said that. And I always felt that now there is something to that approach because you want them to know, listen, you're outranked. And you have to learn in life that you are outranked, and because I said so is good enough for you. Okay, that's a way to communicate a certain idea. Sometimes even he's outranked. I know when I grew up and I'd ask my father something, I said, Dad, could I do this or that, or why, or and my father would say to me, I'm just a buck private, go ask the general, which was my mother. So there is a hierarchy, which means I'm not even a private. I wasn't even a private. I don't know. What am I, a recruit? I wasn't even a private. But I always felt kids are entitled to an explanation, but not necessarily now. Not necessarily now. Because right now, I need it done, or I don't want you to do it. I'll tell you, but not right now. I'll tell you when sometimes I'll tell the kid, like I'm up on a chair doing something, could you get me a screwdriver? Why? Would you just get me the screwdriver? I'll tell you why in a second. I'll tell you why. Right now I'm balancing on a box on a chair on one foot on top of the Now's not the time. Now's not the time to be asking me questions. So I always felt they're entitled to an explanation because the kid needs to understand. But they also have to know that it's non-negotiable. So my son would say to me, Dad, could I go with my friends during vacation up to the Syrian border to do some bungee jumping and alligator wrestling? All right, no. And you want to know why? I'll explain to you why. The Syrian border is dangerous. Alligator wrestling is dangerous. Bungee jumping is dangerous. And that particular group of friends are most dangerous of all. That's why. How do you like that? So, but I make sure you understand. First of all, just realize it's not negotiable. You want an explanation, I'll give you an explanation because you're entitled to it. But realize that this is not a negotiation right now. I've decided, I have made a decision. I have made a decision. And sometimes you want to communicate it. But I always felt that people are entitled to explanations. Perhaps not now. Here the Torah is telling you, sometimes world events are happening. And we're like, why is this happening? Why is God doing this? And often it's only with hindsight, we're like, I see. That's an interesting coincidence that there's an interesting coincidence that the Jews are thrown out of Europe and the next thing you know, they're all living in Israel. What an interesting coincidence. So sometimes you get a little bit of, at least even by the way, to know for sure would take a prophet. But at least sometimes we can look and we're seeing a pattern start emerging. And even in our own lives, when you look back on certain things that have happened in a person's life, and a person realized certain decisions that we made or certain things that forced the decision, and the next thing you know, it could be several years down the line, you realize, oh wow, that kind of worked out well for me. that which I was frustrated by when it didn't work out, kind of worked out okay for me over here. And sometimes you just feel that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is taking you by the nose and led you around to bringing you to a certain point with all sorts of curves and turns on the road. But looking back, we sometimes see that there is a certain rhyme and reason to this. Okay, now why are the Levim chosen? Take a look at Pasuk Tesvav. Vaydaber Hashem al Moshe Bamidbar Sinai Lemor, 738. 6 lines to the bottom. Pikodes b'nei Levi lebeis avosam lemishbechosam. Count the Levium. Kol zachar ben chodesh v'malatif kedem. So the first thing is they're counted from 30 days and on, where we spoke yesterday about the idea that the Jewish people were only counted from 20 years and on. And we had mentioned yesterday the idea that by the Levium, because the Levium were the spiritual leaders, so there was a little more confidence that their children can be counted already from 30 days because there's more confidence that they're going to follow the path. They're going to stay on the path of Torah. One of the commentaries says that part of the idea here is that their fathers serve as a role model. And it's very important for fathers to serve as a role model. If kids, somebody once asked Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, how did he teach his kids to make brachos? They asked Rabbi Yaakov, how did you teach your children to make brachos? So Rabbi Yaakov said, we never taught them to make brachos. I used to make brachos. My wife made brachos. So the kids learned to make brachos. We didn't teach them. They learned by example. So I heard about a little girl, like this 5-year-old little girl, and she picks up an apple and she starts eating the apple. So her father says to her, Miriam, I didn't hear you make a bracha. She goes, no, I'm big now, so I don't have to make brachas out loud, just like the adults. How do you like that? Or the little girl, this is a famous story. There's a little girl her father notices her, every morning she takes like a pink ribbon, she makes a little block and a pink ribbon and she wraps it around her arm 7 times. And then she takes another pink ribbon and she puts it on her head. And so the father's like, wow. And eventually he went to Rav Chaim Kanievsky and he said to Rav Chaim Kanievsky, like, what does this mean? So Rav Chaim said to him, it means you should start davening in a minyan. That's what it means. How do you like that? Where would she even see a man put on tefillin if it wasn't at home? He's not start davening in a minyan. So there's a certain example. What was the example the Levium set that we could be confident they will continue setting the example for their kids? What happened at the Golden Calf? Moshe Rabbeinu called the Levium, said, Mila Hashem Elai, who's going to join me? And what were the Levium told to do? They were told to execute even family members, not Levium, because the Levium, but what about a stepbrother or a stepfather or somebody who is a Yisrael? And the Levium were willing to do it. So if you're willing to go and follow the word, that means we can be sure the fathers that if you're willing to do that, you're also going to get up for Nates. I don't know. Maybe Nates is harder. I'm not sure. But if you're willing, you've got that devotion, so then you're going to have devotion and other. Then the kids are going to notice that, and the kids are going to see what's important to the parents. And I always tell my wife, kids know what's important to you, what's really important to you. The kids know. Whether they follow it and what percentage they follow and so on, that's something else. But they certainly know what's really important to you because they know. They hear you and they see you. Kids know. They can see. Sometimes they'll do it, sometimes they won't. Most of the time they'll basically imitate their parents. Usually kids are imitators. But at the end of the day, they know clearly what's really important to you. That the kids understand. So I saw an interesting question a guy came to a Rav, and he asked him an interesting question. He said that, what was it? Yeah. He said that there were actually two issues. One was they asked a bunch of kids in a school to draw pictures of their family. They draw a picture of family members. So each kid drew pictures of his family. So this one kid draws a picture of his mother. You know, she's wearing an apron in the kitchen. He draws a picture of his sister. His sister is running. He draws a picture of his brother. His brother is running. He's chasing the sister. And then he draws a picture of his father. His picture of his father is he's got his father sitting in a room. The windows are blackened with little dots for stars. He's got a big clock that shows midnight. And his father is sitting there with the Gemara open. Right? Now, he could have also had a picture of his father doing like this. Right? So what the kid sees from the father, that's what's going to have the impression. If the kid sees his father, that's what's important. If his father is learning at midnight, that's obviously what's important to him. So a guy came to a Rav, he asked an interesting shaila, asked a question. He said to the Rav, he gets up in the morning and he goes to the Daf Yomi Shir, and his head is fresh, he has a cup of coffee, and he's able to learn. The problem is the shir is very early. By the time he gets back from the shir, he goes at 6, comes home at 7, and the kids haven't even woken up yet. So they never see daddy going off to learn. On the other hand, he also goes, there's an evening option. The evening option, the kids will see him walking out of the house with the Gemara to go learn. Problem is, if he goes to the evening shir, his head's not clear, he's just going to fall asleep, he's not going to absorb much, which is a bigger priority. Which is a higher priority? That's a very interesting shot. Where is the priority? Of course, the Rav said to him, well, you can do both. You go in the morning, and in the evening you'll take a nap, everything works out. Everything works out well. Obviously, he didn't have the option of doing both. But at the end of the day, that's what affects kids. And I know that's what affects kids. Yeah, my son was at the time he was about 4 years old. So I'm sitting at the table. My wife is running around. The kids were young, and I was eating supper. And everybody else is running around the house. And my son at the time was about 4 years old, and he comes over to me, and I'm eating, and he kind of puts his hands like this, and he's watching me. And I'm like, "Hi, kid," and he's staring at me. And all of a sudden, at a certain point, he says, "Daddy, do you love to eat?" For a second there, I'm, I said something pathetic like, we don't love to eat. We eat so we can be strong to serve Hashem, that sort of thing. But then I was wondering, how come he never came over to me and said, "Daddy, do you love to learn Mishnayos?" Daddy never asked me. When he saw me eating, all of a sudden, "Daddy, do you love to eat?" So obviously, my enthusiasm level, when it came to my plate, was not the enthusiasm level when I was learning Mishnayos. Otherwise, he would have been asking about that too. So we have to understand we're constantly being watched. So the Levium, they're willing to execute their relatives for the good of the cause. That means they'll do everything else for the good of the cause too. Therefore, we can be confident that their kids can be counted from the time they're 30 days old. Okay. Take a look. Oh, by the way, I heard there was I walked into a shop in England, a kosher shop in England. And it was one of these kosher grocery stores, and they had an open display of candy and nuts, where you fill a bag and you weigh it at the scale, you weigh it. So I walk in, and the guy, the owner of the store, he said he wants to tell me a story. He says this was in Manchester. So he wants to tell me a story. He says a man walks into the shop. A man walks into the shop from a religious Jew, and he starts filling bags with candy. He's buying some candy, and while he's filling the bags, he starts munching on the candy as he's filling the bags. He's munching on it. So the proprietor comes over and says, "Listen, you want to taste one or to see if you want it? But this isn't a buffet. This isn't an all-you-can-eat restaurant over here. You taste it, but you have to pay." The guy says, "Okay." He comes back the next week. And again, the next week, he's filling bags, and he's munching while he's filling bags. Okay? So it happens the third week. And the guy says to himself, "Look, the guy's not a mensch. I'm not going to make an issue out of this, but it's really not right, but I'm not going to, if he's not stopping, I'm not going to keep hacking him for that." Okay. About 6 months later, a 7-year-old girl comes into the shop, and she looks around. She starts taking a fistful of candy, puts it in her pocket, takes a fistful of this, puts it in her pocket. This guy's in the office. He's got a camera. So he comes out, he comes out and says to the girl, little girl, you're stealing food. Give me your phone number. I'm calling your parents. So she calls the house. And the father says, okay, I'm coming right down. Man walks into the shop. And he says, your daughter's been putting stuff in her pocket. So he picks up his hand to give her a slap. So the guy grabbed his hand and pulled him into the office. He says, if you slap her, I'm going to slap you. I told you 3 times not to be munching on the candy. And now you want to slap her? Where do you think she learned that from? Right? He said, that was Manchester told me that. He said, was it maybe you were the guy who was stealing? I don't know. Maybe you never. Were you the 7-year-old girl? Oh, okay. That things have changed. At the end of the day, the kids are going to do what their parents do. There was a kid in a frum school. A terrible story. You love it. There was a kid in a frum school who stole something out of another kid's briefcase. So the Rabbi called the kid over. He said, you stole. He said, yeah, I know. So, you're in trouble. He goes, yeah. You don't seem very nervous about it. He says, I'm not. He says, I'm taking you to the principal. So he takes him to the principal. The principal says, what? You stole? You took out a thing? He says, yeah. He says, you're in big trouble. Well, yeah. He says, you don't seem very nervous about it. He says, I'm not. He says, why not? I'm going to call your father. He says, good. My father's going to be proud of me. Your father's going to be why is your father going to be proud of you? He says, because my father walks around the house bragging about how much he cheats the IRS. So my father, will be proud of me. See, what happens is the man doesn't think the father sees a difference. To him, cheating the IRS versus taking a wallet out of a briefcase, to the father, there's a difference. To the kid, there's no difference. And by the way, halachically, you can't cheat the IRS. Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky was once seen walking into a silver shop. So they didn't know why Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky was always learning. Why is he walking into a silver shop? So somebody asked him what happened. He said somebody had given him a pure silver Kiddush cup as a gift. So he was going into a silver shop to have the value assessed so that he could report it on his taxes. How do you like that? I like that. So a person, listen, you gotta be straight. And why are his kids straight? And why are his kids honest? And why are his kids good? Because they see a father. That's the way the father behaves. That's the way the kids are going to behave. They had another story. And this had like a school graduation. So they had these 8th grade kids, and the principal, hundreds of parents in the audience. So they have these kids. They call up 3 kids, and they say, Shmuley, tell us a mitzvah that your family is really enthusiastic about, that your family really does well. And he goes, my family's into tzitzis. We make our own tzitzis, we buy tzitzis, wool tzitzis, we tie tzitzis. He says, he calls the next, he says, tell me a mitzvah your family is really enthusiastic about. So Zalman goes, our family, we're into chesed. We always have guests. They're wonderful. He calls Reuven. He says, Ruby, tell me, what's your family into? What they really do, a mitzvah they do with enthusiasm. He goes, eating cholent. His parents are like, they're dissolving in their seat. And the principal is like, wants to end this real. He's okay, thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. And he calls her and says, Ruby, why did you say that? He said, well, you asked me what they do with enthusiasm. And you asked me, and I could tell. He says, yeah. He says, every Shabbos, my mother brings out the cholent. And up until that point, there's Miros, and somebody says it's Dvar Torah. But when that cholent comes out, my father goes to town on that cholent. Nothing in the world doesn't exist. You asked me, so I told you. He can understand what he's doing wrong. Eating cholent is a mitzvah. He's like, he doesn't understand what you're... I think they probably started serving milchiks after that in the house. Okay. Now, take a look at Pasuk Tes Zayin. So Moshe has to count them, and this is very, very important, gentlemen. It's all important, but this is also very applicable in our day and age. Vayifkod osa Moshe, 4 lines from the bottom on 738. So Moshe's got to count the Levium tots who are after even a month old. Vayifkod osa Moshe, 738, 4 lines from the bottom. Vayifkod osa Moshe al pi Hashem. Moshe counts them by the mouth of Hashem, which needs an explanation, Kasher Tziva, as Hashem commanded him. Now, take a look at Rashi. It's on the left column. Left column, 4 lines to the bottom. So Rashi says, Al Pi Hashem. Amar Moshe lifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Moshe said to Hashem, Heyach ani nichnas l'socha aleim l'das minyan yom kehem. How can I go into their tents to know the number of nursing chill babies? I mean, Moshe Rabbeinu is going to go in to count babies. They're 30 months, they're 30 days old. I mean, these are nursing babies. It's not a very tznius situation. Amar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu, aseh ata shelcha v'ani aseh sheli. Now, it doesn't mean they're nursing, but how are you going to go count babies? Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu, you do as much as you need to do, and I'll do the rest. Holach Moshe, ve'amar al Pesach ha'oel. So Moshe stood by the entrance of the tent. Ve'ashchina mekademes lefanav, and the Shechina, the divine presence, went in. Ubas kol yotza min ha'oel. A heavenly voice comes out, ve'omeres, kach ve'kach tinokos yesh b'al. This is the amount of children in this tent. The kach nemar al pi Hashem. Therefore it says by the mouth of Hashem. So what's the pasuk telling? The pasuk telling us that Moshe Rabbeinu has to go in. And Moshe Rabbeinu goes in, he can't go in. So he said, what should I do? Hashem says, do as much as you can do and I'll do the rest. So he stands by the entrance, and then a heavenly voice comes out and says, this is the amount of kids in the tent. Now, this is a rule in Yiddishkeit. Noach built the Teva. Noach built the ark. How big was the ark? Massive. No matter how big it was, it could not possibly hold, by natural law, the amount of animals that had to go into an ark. Couldn't hold the amount of animals. I went to ask my brother, who was going to be a zoologist. Now he's a Rabbi in a yeshiva. I don't know how many. I was going to say, he keeps guys in cages now, and I once asked him. He was an expert on animals. I asked him how many. There are different opinions, by the way, when it comes to Noach. What went in when it says 2 of each species? Now, species mean dog, cat, lion, hippopotamus, or does it mean German shepherds, collies, poodles, golden retriever? Is it subspecies also? So there are different opinions whether it's species or subspecies. Now, if it's subspecies, it probably wouldn't even be able to hold the amount of dogs there are in the world of subspecies. But if it means species, so I asked them, how many would it have been able to hold just this pair of each species? And he said to me, for sure not. There are so many species of animals that for sure not, number one. Number two, you have to be able to feed these animals for an entire year. Do you know how many pounds of food an elephant eats in a day? 300 minimum. 300 pounds of food. And that's before he becomes a teenager. Because before he becomes a teenager, teenagers sit down to dinner to continue eating. So he is before these are not teenage elephants. These are just regular elephants. And hippopotami, and giraffes, and lions. You can't. So why did Noach have to build a teva? The answer is there's a rule. You do as much as you can do, and then HaKadosh Baruch Hu performs the miracle. Moshe Rabbeinu could have just stayed in his own tent, and Hashem would have just given him a written report about, your job is to count, but I can't go into the tents. Okay, stand by. Do as much as you can do. Stand by the entrance of the tent, and then HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives a report. You understand? Okay. Now the question is, and this is what the Meforshim say, why is Moshe Rabbeinu hesitant to go in? And the answer is, hey, this is somebody else's private domain. Maybe they don't want me in the tent, which is Moshe Rabbeinu's humility to even think. I mean, if Moshe Rabbeinu knocked on my door, I'd want him in my house. Who wouldn't want Moshe Rabbeinu in the house unless they're doing something wrong? A couple of guys are playing cards. We don't want Moshe Rabbeinu around here right now. But everybody would be honored to have Moshe Rabbeinu come into the house. And Moshe Rabbeinu says, it's a private domain. What we're learning about in Gemara, Hezek Re'iyah. You can't even look into somebody else's private domain. And Moshe Rabbeinu says, I can't go in there. It's a private domain. And the lesson over here is that in general, we have to respect people's privacy. Sometimes people ask other people questions, personal questions. Not everybody wants to talk about their personal question. Why are you going to be doing this? Why didn't you do that? So I found a very good answer. I found a very good way without turning into, sometimes it gets unpleasant. like none of your business. I found a much better answer. You just say to somebody, it's in my own best interest not to discuss it. Ooh, it's got that ring of mystery, like it's in my own best. Ooh, maybe he's with the Shabak, Ooh, who knows? Who knows? Maybe he's a CIA. It's in my own best interest not to discuss it. It's one of those answers that just like, oh, but people respect that you have your own best interest. Listen, I'd like to talk about it. It's in my own best interest not to discuss it. And we have to learn to respect other people's space. It's not always the time and place. Sometimes people don't want to talk about it. It's not, like, what are you asking me? Why are you telling me? Why are you getting involved in my business? And therefore, Moshe Rabbeinu is teaching us that we have to respect it. Number two. Number three is a lesson about who we bring into our houses, because we have to know that sometimes with the best meaning intentions, sometimes we're very well meaning. And this is particularly true in the world of Kiruv Rechokim, in the world of trying to draw Jews near. But if you have a family, you often have to wonder, what is the influence of these people on my own children? So I had guys once, I had a shiur years ago in Ohr Somayach. I had a shiur, it almost looked like a script from a TV show. I had 7 guys in the shiur who were all hippie type guys. And several played musical instruments, of course. One of them had long, flaming red hair, and it actually vowed off of wine. There was a concern that he was actually a Nazir. And he had long, flaming red hair. Then I had the 8th guy in the shiur who was as straight as you could possibly be. Jacket, tie, he looked like he stepped off Jewish Accountants magazine, the cover. He almost looked like the Hanukkah licht with the guy who lights him. It was a very funny situation. So I invited them onto the house. I think it was a Hanukkah Masiba in my house. So they come marching into my house, and one of them had a banjo, and one of them had what's it called? Bongo, and a band, and one had a guitar. They come marching into the house, and my kids were very young at the time. And I remember my kids were like standing against the wall, and they're like this. They're looking at these guys, and then my impressionable 7-year-old son, he says to me, he looks at the guy with the flaming red hair, he says, "Daddy, is that a shaitel?" And it dawned on me, what this is making an impression on them. There is some impression over here. Okay, I had no problem. And you also have to remember, sometimes you have guests in the house, they may start talking about what to them is normal, and to your frum kids is totally and utterly inappropriate. So it's always a concern what you're bringing into your tent. So Moshe Rabbeinu is, let's be careful here. I had a friend whose son went off the derech, and it wasn't a situation where the father was too harsh or too rough or too demanding or anything, and they couldn't figure it out. They said, was it a problem? So one day the father said to the son, what happened to you? Was it something in school, something we did? Well, what was it? What pushed you away? The kid said to the father was involved in Kiruv, and the kid said to his father, "Daddy, it's the girls you brought into the house." So, you have to think about it. What's going to be the fallout over here? You want to do a good thing, but what are you sacrificing? What do you sacrifice? And that's what we're learning. Moshe Rabbeinu, I can't go into that. I don't know if they want me in the tent. I don't know what their reaction is going to be. Okay. Now, take a look at Pasuk Mem Gimel. If we have time, we're going to go back to something else, but I don't know if we're going to have time. Take a look at Pasuk Mem Gimel. Gimel Mem Gimel. Okay. So here it says that Moshe Rabbeinu counts them. It's on 742. 742, about 742, about 8 lines from the top, 9 lines from the top. Okay. Well, start actually from 5 lines from the top, because we have a little research to do. Vayomer Hashem el Moshe, Pekod kol bechor zachor livnei Yisrael, count every male bechor for the Jewish people, mi ben chodesh v'mala, from 1 month and on, v'sa es mispar shmosam, count their names, count their number. In other words, count the bechors. Okay. Now, before anything, look at that word, 5 lines from the top, look at the word bechor very carefully. Now, what is the rule with a firstborn son? When a man dies, what does the firstborn son get? A double portion. That means if there are 3 sons, you divide the portions in 4. And the bechor gets 2 of the portions. Each one gets 1. If there are 7 sons, you divide it into 8 portions. I mean, not double of everybody. He gets double of what any individual son gets. Okay. Look at the word bechor, gentlemen, very carefully. You see the letter Beis? Everybody see that? It's the last word on the 5th line from the top on 742. Last word from the fifth line to the top, last word. You see the letter Beis? Okay. What's the letter in the Aleph Beis that comes before a Beis? Aleph. So Beis is exactly twice 2 is twice 1. Right? That's the double portion. What's the letter that comes before a chaf in the Aleph Beis? Is a yud. A chaf, the numerical value of a chaf is 20. The numerical value of a yud is 10. It's exactly twice the numbered letter that comes before it. What's a resh? 200. What's the letter before it? Is a kuf, which is 100. Every letter in the word bechor is exactly double the letter that comes before it in the Aleph Beis. That means the essence of the bechor is the double portion, number 1. Number 2, it says you count the bechors from a month and on. Then what? V'lakachta es ha-leviim li, take the Leviim, ani Hashem, tachas kol bechor b'vnei Yisrael, ves behemas ha-leviim tachas kol bechor b'vehemas b'nei Yisrael. And you take the animals of the Leviim. Okay. How many bechors were there? Vayifkod Moshe kasher tziva Hashem oso es kol bechor b'vnei Yisrael. Vayihi kol bechor zochar b'mispar shemos b'ben chodesh v'mal lifkudehem. Shnayim ve'esrim elef shlosha v'shivim u'masayim. How many bechors were there? 22,372. How many Jews were there? Males between 20 and 60, about 600,000. That was only the tribe of Binyamin. That was only the tribe of Binyamin. There are 600,000 males between the ages of 20 and 60. Now divide 600,000 by 22,000. What do you get? 600,000 divided by 22,000. 22,000 firstborns. What do you get? Anybody want to take a guess? Now, yeah, do a calculation. No, not that sweet. Not that sweet. Do a quick calculation of dividing 600,000 by 22,000. I have a watch calculator. How much it come out to? About 2627, right? That means there's 1 bechor for every 26 people. You know any families with 26 kids? No. How do you like that? 1 firstborn for every 27 kids? Remember what the Medrash says? The Jewish people the women were having 6 at a time. Oh, they were multiplying in some ridiculous numbers. Oh, look at that. It carries through. 1 bechor for every 26 people. That means they're having about 4 or 5 births per family, 6 kids each. 26 kids in a family, now you got 1 bechor. And that's consistent with the idea of they multiplying beyond natural law. How many Leviim were there, including from 30 days and on? Only 22,000 Leviim. That's the whole kit and caboodle, and that includes all the babies. Remember, by the Jewish people, it's only between 20 and 60 that were counted. We didn't even talk about the ones younger than 20, older than 60. And therefore you see that when the Torah is saying the consistency, it carries all the way through. It carries all the way through. Now, why do the bechors have to be redeemed? They take we're going to see the Torah is going to go on. Each bechor has a Levi who's going to redeem him. He's redeemed by a Levi, and the Bechors that didn't have a Levi to redeem them have to pay a certain amount of money to be redeemed. Why are the Bechors... let's make the question a little bit better. Where did the Bechors get their Kedusha? Why do they have a holiness that they need to be redeemed? Being redeemed means, for example, if a person would take, let's say I say these glasses are Hegdish. That means they've been devoted to the Beis HaMikdash. Now, they're not necessarily Kohanim who are needing my reading glasses. So what do you do with the glasses? The glasses are owned by the Beis HaMikdash. Then I redeem it from the Beis HaMikdash by giving them money, and they use the money for whatever the needs are, korbanos or whatever they use the money for. But if once I pledge it, who does it belong to? It belongs to the Beis HaMikdash. It needs to be redeemed. The Bechors belong to God, so to speak. So they need to be... Why do they belong to God that they need to be redeemed by a Levi? Why do the Bechors have to be redeemed? The answer is a shocker. If you turn back to Parshas Bo, Parshas Bo. We'll end with this, gentlemen, but I just want to show you this. Moshe Rabbeinu reports to Moshe, Hashem reports to Moshe Rabbeinu about the plague of the firstborn. Take a look at page 346. Take a look at page 346. This is going to shock you a little bit. I don't know if it's going to shock you. That might be too strong. It's going to surprise you. On page 346, right where that white space is in the middle of the page, that first pasuk after that white space, pasuk Daled. Vayomer Moshe, Ko amar Hashem, kachatzos halayla ani yotze besoch Mitzrayim. At midnight, I'm going to go out into the land of Egypt. Umeis kol bechor be'eretz Mitzrayim. Every bechor is going to die. Then he relay mi bechor paro yoshev ad bechor hashivcha shorachim v'chol bechor be'ema. But the statement of umeis kol bechor be'eretz Mitzrayim is a general statement. That statement could also include the firstborns of the Jews. It's only afterwards that then Moshe Rabbeinu says, and the Bechor of Paro, but the first statement is a general statement, all-inclusive. At that moment, that means they belong to God. Now you have to redeem them. And therefore they have to be exchanged for a Levi, because at a certain point, God took them for himself, so to speak. That's what the Mefarshim say. All right, let's stop here. Now, those are in the Gemara Shir, in my Gemara Shir,